Idaho Matters podcast is brought to you by St. Luke's On-Demand Virtual Care, which allows patients to see a provider from their home using a computer or smartphone with on-demand care for common ailments, such as a cough, sore throat, or a sinus issue. More information at stlukesonline.org. From Boundary to Bear Lake, Fremont to Payette, Oahe to Oneida, there are interesting people, places, and histories in all of Idaho's counties. And Idaho Matters wants to share it with you with stories from all 44 counties that make up the Gem State. Email your ideas to idahomatters@boisestate.edu or use the Talk to Us feature in our app, available on Apple and Android, and tune in each weekday at noon for Idaho Matters.
From the studios of Boise State Public Radio News, I'm Samantha Ryan filling in for Jimmy Gaudette. It's Idaho Matters. They've won Pulitzer Prizes, the O. Henry Prize, National Book Awards, the Pushcart Prize. They've been poet laureates and NEA fellows. They write poetry and essays and memoirs. And no matter the accolades, they're all writers. And their common thread is appearing in this year's edition of the Limberlost Review, a literary journal of the Mountain West. Back with us again to tell us about the 2025 edition is writer, editor, and publisher Rick Ardinger. Rick, thanks for coming back on Idaho Matters.
Well, thank you, Samantha. It's great to talk to you again on the radio.
On the radio. It's been a little while. For those who may not have had the great pleasure of reading a Limberlost review, tell us about them. What are they? And I think they come out once a year.
Well, actually, it has a long history, but I won't go into all that. But we started the Limberlost Review as a poetry magazine way back in 1976, back in the typewriter days. And but some years later, we wound up just devoting our time to printing books by individual writers, individual poets and fiction writers, and over the years. And anyway, when I retired as director of the Idaho Humanities Council where I was for almost 30 years, I decided I wanted to revive the review. And so as a literary annual, which means it's a literary journal of poetry, fiction, essays, interviews, and one of my favorite parts of it are the rereadings. Rereadings where I knew as an annual we couldn't be current with reviews necessarily of new books. So I asked writers to reflect on books that moved them in their lives early in their lives, and why. And so we call them rereadings. And so writers write about everything from Kurt Vonnegut's Slaughterhouse-Five, and for example, in this current edition, Grove Koger writes about Richard McKenna, who wrote Sand Pebbles, many years ago. And so anyway, I had quite a number of contacts over the years because we published a lot of poets in 50 years, and 2026 will be our 50th anniversary.
Wow.
And over that time, we published a lot of writers. And then as I was the director of the Idaho Humanities Council, I had a huge bank of scholars and writers, everything I could rely on. And sure enough, in 2019, when we decided to revive the Limberlost Review, we had we had plenty of contributors. So it's it's been a lot of fun.
Well, for anyone who hasn't seen one of these, I mean, it's pretty thick. It's like 475 plus pages, I think, this time around. Like you said, you've got all kinds of writers. You've got poetry. You've got artwork, beautiful artwork. You've got photos and block prints and a little bit of everything in here, and a little bit for everyone. I think. I love these when they come out because I can catch up with folks I know. I can find new people. These are people who are working writers all across the West. And it's kind of a labor of love. You and your wife, Rosemary, put this out each year through Limberlost Press, right?
We do. And the interesting thing is that we do feature a lot of great Idaho poets, fiction writers, artists, but it is not necessarily just a regional or a Boise-centric journal. For example, like we have a lot of Idaho contributors, like poet Bob Bushnell and Judith Freeman from Fairfield, and Mitch Wheeland has a story in here that's quite good, and Jeff Faraday has a short story here. Ted Dyer from Haley, Grove, and Margaret Koger have work in here, from Barbara Alec Hamilton, Zon Zancanella, and Jim Hipworth from Lewiston. There's a lot of Idaho work in here, but at the same time, it's got work by Wendell Berry, Gary Snyder, Sherman Alexie, Mexican American writer Gary Soto, National Poet Laureate Ted Kuzer. So there's a lot in here.
Well, and I was flipping through this just this morning. I had looked at it before, but I was flipping through. And you mentioned Bob Bushnell. He's got some poetry in here, including short things like "Apart," a poem called "Apart." It goes, "Funny how I miss those things that bothered me." I loved that.
I love that poem.
Isn't that
I
great?
love that poem.
And then I was looking at you've got Teresa Jordan in here, and she's got a memoir, "The Last Conversation," remembering writer Terrence O'Donnell. And what a wonderful story that is, where she talks about not only her last conversation with Terrence, but how she met him and her time, that they spent as friends, and how important friendship is. You run the gamut in here. You've got all kinds of wonderful works, whether you want to pick it up for just a couple of minutes or sit back and read it for quite a while. And I know it's not politically correct to ask the editor if you have a favorite piece. So tell me about one or two that you're just very fond of.
Well, that's a tough one on the. that's a real tough thing, because I like so much of it, and I recruit a lot of writers to write for us, and the among the artists, for example. The cover is by Randy Van Dyke, who owns the Contemporary Art Gallery on Capitol Boulevard. I had him do some framing for me recently, and I saw some of the work that he displays, and I've been to his openings, of course, and so I was very. As soon as I saw his a couple of his paintings. I said, I need that for my cover. Um,
And
uh,
it looks like the front of a blue car, an old blue car truck, and then on the wheel
yes,
is a bird's nest with little tiny
or
birds.
that's an old, yeah, yeah. We've all seen that before. I guess the things that impress me so much are uh, the interview with Onyx Smith. She's a Montana writer and filmmaker, partner of writer Bill Kittredge for many, many, many years,
Yeah.
and Judith Freeman, who was she lives up on the Fairfield Prairie and the Campus Prairie up there. That said she was going to go visit Onik recently, about a year back or so. And I said, my gosh, what do you say about interviewing her for the next Limberlost? And she loved the idea, and she went up and did that. I love Onyx's work. She was a she's a filmmaker, she's an executive producer for The River Runs Through It, which
Oh,
was Norman Plain's great uh, book, great memoir, and she produced a beautiful film many years ago called Heartland, which
yeah.
if you can't find it, you need to search it out because it's a beautiful film about making your way in Montana about 1910,
Nice.
and it's beautiful.
We've also got, I'm looking at Charlotte Mears, The Day I Fell in Love with Julia Child. Um, I loved that. That's a great poem. We're throwing out a lot of names, and if folks don't know the folks that we're talking about, maybe aren't familiar with their work, is this way a good way to maybe meet them through the Limberlost review?
Well, I hope so. I hope so. There have been uh, a lot of people who have really made my life uh, what it is, and I've always loved the work of fiction writer Jim Harrison, for example, and in the 2024 edition of uh, of the Limberlost, we you know we've we had a piece by Rick Johnson about his love for um, the work of Jim Harrison. Rick Johnson, as you remember, was the director of the uh, Idaho Conservation League for many, many years. And but anyway, I I think there's so much in here that I just feel like we need to perpetuate it as much as we can.
Well, can we talk about that? Because you've got a lot of folks, from Sherman Alexie to some of the others we've mentioned in here, and you devote a lot of time and effort to these writers of the West. It feels like there used to be a lot of these kinds of venues, small presses, small publishings, but that maybe there aren't as many as there used to, especially with the invention of the internet. Whereas, this is a nice, meaty, get your hands on it kind of thing. Are you seeing that? Are there fewer of these venues for these writers?
Well, it's not that there are fewer, but there are more online.
Mm.
And the thing that I honestly believe, at least I believe, that writers love to see their work on paper. And that's I think why so many writers have flocked to the review, the Limberlost Review, because they love seeing their work on paper. And there are a lot of there's a proliferation of online journals, but
Yeah.
but I think a lot of people like to see their work and to see it in print and then to put it on their shelf.
And get your
There are a lot of honestly, there are a lot of old timers in this literary journal. Wendell Berry doesn't email anymore. He sent me, typewritten typewritten poems.
you,
Um,
you don't have to be an old timer to enjoy something like this. Rick, I can't recommend enough for people to go out and get a hold of the newest one. I know you've got another one that'll come out next year. And thanks for being on the show. I really appreciate you giving us a little look inside the pages.
Well, thank you very much, Samantha, and we appreciate your recognition of it all.
We've been speaking with writer, editor, and publisher Rick Ardinger about the 2025 edition of the Limberlost Review, a literary journal of the Mountain West. It's out now. We'll put a link to Limberlost on our website.
You've been listening to Idaho Matters from Boise State Public Radio. I'm Gemma Gaudette.